Well, welcome everyone. Thank you so much for joining us this afternoon. As Dana said, I'm Marissa Alden. I am the CEO and co-founder of Sawyer. I definitely wanted to thank everyone for being here and certainly being a part of our Sawyer network. I wanted to spend today telling you a little bit about, yes, thank you, Dana, about myself and who I am and why we started Sawyer, and just a bit more about the process of building this company. I've been running Sawyer now for almost 8 years. It will be 8 years in September. So in many ways, we're still a relatively young business. And it kind of goes back to, I guess, my own personal choices as when I was younger around what it is I wanted to do. So I studied human development with a focus in early childhood education when I was at college. And the power of what a great education could do has been something I've been passionate about for many years. And then I spent the last 15 years really in the technology space. I have fallen in love with technology and what it can do for people and society. Sawyer is actually not my first startup. I had another company beforehand called Go Try It On, which was a fashion technology application that I ran in 2009. And we ended up selling that business. But for me, the last kind of 15 years have been about technology, consumer product development, and kind of the marrying of the two around what, I guess a product leader, we can do to help technology change our lives. So this little phrase rings true. A professor of mine once said this, where were you when the piece of paper was blank? And I know many of you are also founders and owners on this call, so you can probably relate to this, but that kind of notion of the beginning of Sawyer when there was really nothing there, I'd love to kind of tell you about how we got started. So as I mentioned, I started another technology company back in 2009, and we ended up selling the business to a company called Rent the Runway, which many of you might know if you're New York based or maybe have rented a dress before, a fashion item. And it was this amazing technology company where I got to go and join and run what was their product and their innovation team. And I got to spend a lot of time with engineers and designers and merchandisers, which I was not one of. But one of the best parts about my journey at Rent the Runway was the people I met. It's where I met Stephanie, my co-founder of Sawyer, who I believe is on the call, and then Andrew, our other co-founder, who many of you I'm sure knew and were familiar with. And at the time, Rent the Runway had tasked us with building a subscription product of our own. So they wanted us to build out a business where people could subscribe and get access to dress rentals kind of on demand all the time. And I'm sure many of you from back in 2015 might remember other great subscription products. So Gwynnie Bee was one, ClassPass, Birchbox. And so at the time, we were all kind of obsessing around these different cool consumer companies that were making access to, fashion and beauty and fitness easy. But then the real inspiration for Sawyer was this little girl. So this is Maddie Choi. For many of you, you may know her, recognize her. At the time, she was only 2. This is Steph's daughter. So Steph was kind of coming back to work and thinking and dreaming about subscription, but then complaining to me how hard it was to find a great music class for Maddie in the neighborhood. We live in Brooklyn. We have access to all this amazing enrichment, but who would she go to? Where would she turn? She ended up looking on a Yahoo group for a great music class for Maddie. And then she'd talk about how she'd be at the park and other parents would come up to her and talk about these great classes in the neighborhood. And it was frustrating for her because she was doing all this at work to get everyone a dress in under an hour on their phone. But why was something as important as her daughter's education hard? And, as she kind of grumbled to me, this was like, the sky opened up for me, and it kind of brought back all of the learnings I had done from college around education, the power of education. But it seemed like technology could possibly solve this problem for her. And so I got really excited. And we started kind of talking about this space and why there wasn't great technology yet in this space. And, that didn't seem fair. It didn't sit with me because something as important as her daughter's education felt hard. So this was the very first email, and I just wanted to share it with you all. It's actually dated March 5th, 2015, from Stephanie. Just had a random business idea. You've heard of ClassPass, right? What if the same service existed for kids' classes, where you could try different classes, facilitate each month for a flat fee, also could drop in on things when you suddenly have a day alone with your kids or a weekend, or your nanny could use it. What do you think? I haven't heard of anything like this. So this was that kind of very first aha moment email where she kind of had the idea, and it definitely got me pretty excited. And so we had the obligatory coffee shop moment where Stephanie was sitting, post leaving our jobs, where we're starting to think about this business and actually build this business. And actually, I guess this was cut off, but we have a list of the launch to-dos to actually launch what, of course, you all know and love as Sawyer. At the time, it was actually originally called the Kids Passport. And I don't know if anyone on the call remembers that. Maybe thumbs up if you do. I'm sure we have some folks that might even remember that business. And so, why now? And I'm kind of saying back to 2015. And ultimately for us, this was the time that brands had been innovating and evolving how we shopped, how we ate, how we traveled, how we listened to music, how we buy things for the last, 10 years here. And it felt like this industry of educators and innovators and leaders deserved the same. And it was this kind of, moment where I felt like I had the skill set and the network to potentially help create a company and a business and a product that could evolve and push this industry forward the way all these other amazing companies had done across all these other industries. And it did feel near and dear to my heart because I care deeply about the realities of what a wonderful education can do for people. And so that's really why we started Sawyer. That was really kind of the aha moment and the reason of the why now. Why did this make sense? We, of course, got down to business. For us, we had a sense of how the product should work, but also knew enough that we know we couldn't get it all right alone. And so we had to spend some time thinking about who we were actually building this business for. We had to contact potential customers. So we made some calls and to see who would meet us. I'm not sure if either of these providers are on the call. I think maybe one is, but we reached out to a company called Smith Street Workshop and Treasure Trunk Theater. And we asked the owners if they would come meet us at a local Brooklyn coffee shop and talk about their business and their challenges and kind of what they dreamed of when it came to scheduling. And that was someone even referred to it as the S word, scheduling. And kind of, how they wanted to grow their business eventually. So the initial product was very much shaped by providers and by, frankly, a theater provider and a language educator in how they wanted this system to work. And we'd sit with them with my head of engineering and our head of design, and Elisa would just talk and tell us how she set up camps and how she wanted to do it and how she wanted to price it and her wish list for features and functionality. We'd take notes, and that was kind of the beginning. And we'd go away, we'd build something and bring it back to Elisa and show it to her. And she'd say, well, I don't really like this, or could this work this way? And it was this really kind of collaborative partnership where providers and product designers together built the very first version of Sawyer. And that is very much what you see today. Much of this product, certainly a lot of it has changed, but the core really hasn't. And this calendar and this way we look at the schedule was very much from the early days of how we thought about building something that hopefully transformed this industry and helped push this industry forward. In addition to the software piece, we also ultimately wanted to help Steph discover that music class she was looking for. So, back to the original idea, the software was created to help providers make their lives easier. And then how could we also, make it easier for parents to discover these classes, be it a mobile friendly experience, be it our marketplace, be it reviews, email confirmations, all the best practices of what we were seeing in e-commerce across the web. How do we bring that to this industry to make it, better for everyone? And that was really the essence of how we started and hopefully how we're continuing to build this business. So this was like, 2017. We were building our product and creating something new. It was also a time when Steph and I were both in our 30s and interested in growing our own families. I had gotten married. I also was expecting my first daughter. Steph had a second child. So Maddie became a big sister. And so listen, like Sawyer has been with us through some of the most critical and challenging and fulfilling part of our lives. Of course, it's a business and it has to achieve many things, but it's so much of who Steph and I are. And it's been so very, very close to our hearts. And it's been such a core part of our own identities. We try to bring our whole selves to running this company. And that was always the vision, it was always like, gosh, we get to like work together and solve this really interesting and difficult problem. And oh, thank you for the clap. And be and get to do what we love together. And a huge part of that though is obviously having our personal lives kind of take over when they need to take over, as I'm sure many of you can understand and appreciate. Okay, so now we'll talk a little bit about what is special about Sawyer. So we have 4 things I wanted to cover: our mission, our technology, our values, and our process. So our mission at Sawyer is to give every child the opportunity to discover their own love of learning. When we started and dreamed up Sawyer, we wanted to be a company with a mission, with a soul. When we build our software, we try to ask ourselves, who is this ultimately serving? Who is this making it better for? Can it help a business owner? Can it help a parent? Can it ultimately help a child? I often think about a time where one of our large Brooklyn strategy gaming providers was telling us a story. I think they might be on the call, I'm not sure, about when he was running his operation and a child came into his facility. And it was very clear to them that this child, it was kind of maybe he was a little nervous and he came in and he started getting comfortable with the strategy games and he started making some friends and he started connecting. And after maybe the first few classes, I think his parent went up to the owner and said, look, I just want to tell you, this has been the first time my child has felt like himself. And this sent chills down my back and still sends chills down my back. For us, like, this is what it's about, right? I mean, of course, it's software and it can be buggy and we have to pay our bills. But like the fact that every single day in one of your facilities that could happen is so cool and so awesome. And it definitely gets me out of bed in the morning. And I really can't think of a better thing to be kind of helping to achieve. And I'm pretty confident that all of our 40 employees feel similarly. And maybe it happened for them as a parent or them as a student one time, one place long ago. But we deeply, deeply love and appreciate what is going on in your 4 walls or your backyard or wherever you host classes. And so, having this kind of mission at the forefront of what we're doing is ultimately why we do what we do. Okay, technology. So as I've said a few times, I am very passionate about the power of technology and what it can do. And I'm excited about what we're building because I think this industry deserves the amazing innovation I see across all the other consumer products that are out there. I have a vision that like ultimately you guys will be able to text a parent when class begins and there'll be this really cute, emoji that goes with it. So if it's an art provider, it will say like Blake is starting art class and the emoji will come up. Maybe that's wrong. Maybe nobody wants that, but that's the type of innovation that I think we can achieve, through technology. And that might be a small example, but you get the idea. Or I know it was a favorite, at least when I was doing sales early on, where you could block out a holiday on your calendar so that you couldn't schedule class on those holidays and parents would know that was a day off for you. And to me, that was like a great step forward where providers didn't have to kind of cross it out or send a little note or just kind of do it in a clunky way. Instead, let's let tech make this easier for you. And so that is ultimately, why I get excited is that we all can help see how great tech and great product and great design can make life better for you as the owner, certainly for your teams and hopefully for your parents as well. our values. Yeah, so these 6 core values, this is what we call them at Sawyer, are our core values, and it's really how we do what we do at Sawyer. So we actually developed these about 8 years ago. First and foremost, just Steph and I kind of quietly in the back room, and then with the team of, I think it was 8 at the time, and they've evolved a bit over time. But it's the idea of how do we want to operate as a business, and how do we want to present ourselves into the world. It's a way for us to remind our team and our partners who we are and what we believe in. And it's a sense of what it will be like to work at Sawyer and hopefully work with Sawyer. And it may not be for everyone, which is totally okay. But it's, our values and how we talk about celebrating milestones internally. We actually do core value rewards at Sawyer for our employees. So we try to highlight people who are really, living these values in their day-to-day, and we tell stories about it. And it's actually something, we've talked about with Dana and Stephanie about how we would potentially bring some of our providers into the fold with this. How do we also reward and celebrate you all for these values? And I'm sure you have many of your own values, which would be interesting to learn more about. And so, when we built this company and when we operate the company, having these values as a part of kind of our DNA has been a really powerful way to grow this business, to get people to come work with us, to kind of have these kind of pillars of strength in place. And our process, I know this is probably of a lot of interest to many of you. I wanted to talk a little bit about how we develop products at Sawyer, why we choose what we choose, and how it's evolved over the last few years. In many ways, it hasn't a ton, which I guess is I think is a good thing. It's something I'm pretty proud of. In many ways, we are still in the room with Elisa, learning about what she needs. We try to listen. So our product, our sales team, our ops teams work side by side with providers to hear what is going on. So I'm sure many of you have written into Dana or talked to Dylan or talked to Colby and said, look, I need this. This isn't working for me. And so we keep those notes, keep a huge list. We call it our priority grid. And it's a running list. And those features are discussed weekly with myself, with our VP of engineering, with our COO, and our Dana, our director of provider experience. And we talk about the benefits and the cons and the what ifs if we went for it. They're evaluated, the products are weighed, they're discussed, and then they're scoped. And so our director of engineering comes in and says, well, that's an amazing feature, Marissa, but it's going to take our team months and months. And so is there something else that's important, but maybe not necessarily as meaty of an engineering product? And so then we bring up another idea and we kind of weigh the options, and ultimately we pick and then we build and we design and build and prototype a product. We then usually release it to a beta group of providers. So a few of you might have had early access to certain features, and we get your feedback. And we're back in the metaphoric room with Elisa and talking about what worked and what didn't work and what she wanted more of and what she wanted less of. And then we iterate again, and then there's a formal release. And that's the kind of product process we work through at Sawyer. It's magical in many ways because it is innovative, while also it evolves and it can always change, and there's not always a right answer, but we try our best to pick features that are going to impact the most of you. We try to pick features that we think are kind of core to your workflow that you deal with daily. Not that a small item won't get taken on, but we really do try to spend our time where we think you'll all get the biggest bang for our buck. So that's kind of the product process. And I know there's some questions about that, so we can go into some more detail later. So what's next for Sawyer? Talk a little bit about our future. Okay, our ever-evolving roadmap. So look, I think the brilliance of what we're trying to do is about bringing the best-in-class innovation and technology to you all and to our families. We're always trying to stay nimble, We don't want to get too rigid in our process or in our roadmap. As I'm sure many of you that were running your businesses in 2020 appreciate, we had a whole roadmap, we had a whole plan, and then COVID hit and that went out the window. And in 2 weeks, we needed to build the ability for providers to offer online learning. And that was it. And we could do it because we don't necessarily have to stick with what we initially set out. And we want to be flexible. We want to evolve based on what you need. I would have never guessed that we needed to put vaccine card status on the PDP, but that's what we ended, that's kind of where we needed to go. And so we have kind of a plan that is to go forward, but also keep some room for flexibility. And when things come up, we want to be responsive to that. That being said, we have kind of 4 key areas I wanted to talk about. When we decide to build and what we decide to build very much comes from these 3 pillars of product development: stability, trust, and delightfulness. And those are kind of the anchors in which we look through, the lenses in which we look through what we build. On our roadmap now is features and functionality relating to scalability and stability. So as you know, we have grown and you have grown over the last few years, making sure that technology can support more orders, more parents, rush registrations, and it's fast and is done in a way where you all feel proud to use Sawyer is a key part of our roadmap this year. Streamlining schedules. So as a core part of the product, we want to make sure scheduling is easy, is fast, is streamlined to help your work stream so that you have a new employee and she's trying to get up to speed and she's confused. We've done a disservice. How do we make it simple and easy and kind of exactly what you or a new person expect it to be? Communication and reporting. We know that working with parents and understanding your business are at the heart of what you do. And so we want to make both of these pieces of this product stronger and easier to use. And then finally, delightfulness. So doing everything that you do, I can imagine, I'm picturing Elisa up in the middle of the night working on her schedule. If somehow she can do it in a way that there's a little smile to it, or she feels the magic of delightfulness, we've done our jobs. And so making sure that we've infused a bit of that in the product experience for you, and then of course for your families, is what we are hoping for. So those are our 4. And then yes, kind of where we are now. So, I mean, look, it's been 7.5 years, but in many ways it does feel like just the beginning. We're at a point where we have thousands of providers using the software across the country. It's been very rewarding to watch your businesses grow. I know I've also gotten to watch some of your own families grow. My family has grown. I now have 3 children, and Stephanie has 2. And many of our team members have also had families and kind of grown within their own lives. It's just the beginning, we're here because we want to change this industry for the better. We want to make it easier. We want to make it a given. And we really appreciate your thoughts and your feedback on the product, and being willing to work with us and work alongside of us to ultimately make this industry stronger and more enriching and more delightful. So thank you all so much.
I just wanted to take a moment to thank Marissa and to thank all of you for being with us here today. Marissa, any final words before we wrap up and say goodbye?
Well, special thanks to Dana for being a part of Sawyer as well, and certainly helping us build this business and this wonderful community. Appreciate your time and taking time out of your days to join us. And yeah, please let us know if there's anything else we can do. And I hope you have a wonderful spring and a very busy fall for lots of enrichment for all the kids out there.
Awesome. Well, I'll stop today's recording and thank you all. We'll stay tuned for the follow-up. You can share it with your teams. Thank you all for being here with us as always.